Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Atomic Mass Transmissions Live. I'm Will Schick, Director of Product Development for Atomic Mass Games. Glad you could be here with me today. Today is a double whammy week of Marvel action. Let's use that. That sounded pretty good, right? We've got Black Swan and Supergiant, who were just recently revealed on our social medias 2 weeks ago, I think, at this point. I'm going to be painting Black Swan today. Dallas is going to be painting Supergiant tomorrow. I'll talk a little bit about these cool characters, get some colors on them, just kind of show them off. And then, of course, you'll learn more about them in the coming weeks, as well as they'll be featured in some mini-stravaganza goodness that's going to be coming the first week in June. So let's get this camera off of me and get this camera onto the star of our show, Miss Black Swan. The Princess of Power. Okay, so I'm going to go for a pretty traditional take on my Black Swan here. So we're going to be doing kind of the undead blue-gray flesh. We're going to do some black leathers. We'll have some fun with the robot probably and just figure out like how we want to do that. Maybe we'll make it look a little bit more Iron Man-y. Maybe we'll make it look a little more cosmic. I don't know. We'll figure it out. So with that said, shablam. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try this new speed paint, which is called Magic Blue. And I'm just going to use this as an undertone for what's going to be my black. And I can tell that I'm going to mix a little bit of it, so I think I'm going to take some of this plasmatic bolt. And then there's some speed paint medium, I'm told, that exists. There it is. Take some speed paint medium. Put that in there like that, because we want to thin this up. I don't want it to be as thick as a speed paint normally would be. And I'm just going to start kind of mixing in these colors until I get something that, yeah, I think that'll work. It's a little more on the green side. Let's add a little more blue. Yeah, Supergiant does come with hood up or down. It's one of like one of the more interesting stories with these characters is that we always intended to just have the hood be up. That's how she's normally depicted in battle and in the comics and stuff like that. You do see her with her hood down from time to time, but it's typically not in the mix of fighting. And the sculptor, Dave Kidd, did such an amazing job on the head when he turned in the sculpt. We were like, it's so beautiful. We have to let people who want to show it off just show it off. It was a shame to only cover it up with a hood. So in lieu of just how great the sculpt turned out, we actually did options with it. So we made sure that you can have the hood up, you can have the hood down. It wasn't a ton of extra work to do that. You know, we talk about miniatures having options and stuff and how we determine what gets an option and what doesn't. Hoods are a little tricky just because you have to factor in the fact that when a hood's down, you get that extra pull of cloth around the neck and stuff. So it did wind up being a couple of extra parts added to the frame. But there's a Dallas Kemp on his way. I don't know what he's doing, but he's coming through the door. So, yeah. So you will have your choices with Supergiant. I did mine with the hood up because that's classically how I think of her looking, and I think it's just more sinister that way. But the head sculpt and details and everything on it are, they're just fantastic. I mean, amazingly gorgeous. So, no, Scourge does not have any options. He's just got his Executioner's Axe. But I think a lot of eagle-eyed observers who went to the product page did notice that there is a Team Tactic card. That obviously plays in to his Des and Troy twin M16s that the MCU definitely made quite famous with that amazing scene. So we didn't forget about it, but both Scourge and Heimdall are completely based off of their classic kind of interpretations. And of course, we talk about, options making sense and all of that. If you look at the way that Scourge is holding his axe and everything else. Like there's no way to really have it so that he can have either a giant two-handed executioner's axe or be holding twin machine guns and have it look, in any way, shape, or form like it makes sense. So again, all I'm doing with this kind of mix of magic blue and the plasmatic green is just doing a little bit of an undercoat, and then when I put the black over top of it, it's going to give us some nice highlights that look colored. They'll look a little cosmic-y, and it'll do all that for us pretty darn quick. So knock that stuff out. What we got going on? How about if I just simply say concerning Black Order and leaderships that there is going to be a second leadership option and opportunity for those who love the Black Order, but maybe don't always want to take Papa Thanos. So you'll have to wait for all of the final info to come out in the panel to play, or one of the panels to play, I'm sure. But it will be revealed. It was very fun, obviously, to go back and get to revisit the Black Order. It was one of those affiliations that we knew we wanted to do, but of course has a pretty limited roster of characters from the comics, and so we always knew it was going to be one of the smaller affiliations that we ever got to work on. And it's always great to know in your back pocket that you've got a couple extra characters that you can work on later and can add some opportunities and options to things. And of course, when those characters are characters as cool as Black Swan and Supergiant, that makes it extra juicy and delicious. But we had a really good time going back and you can kind of relook at the Black Order, and of course they got several of the updates between Ebony Maw and little adjustments to Corvus and Proxima, of course, during our relook at a lot of those initial character designs. So we're also able to use some of that information and stuff that we knew what Black Swan and Supergiant were doing, because they were obviously completed a little bit before that process occurred. So it was fresh in our minds, and we had a lot of good playtest feedback and data to kind of fall back on and start messing with. So that was pretty fun. All right. So with that done, okay, I'm going to move on to the black. We're just going to try this Grim Black from the Speed Paint line. And we'll do a little test just to see how heavy this is going to cover. I want to make sure that it's going to definitely tint all of the area black, but I still want it to be thin enough that we're going to get that nice undertone through. Yeah, it's pretty thin. So I'm not going to add any medium to it because it looks like it's going to go on pretty thin in general. So we're just going to start slapping this on, and then once it dries, we can use kind of the imperfections, quote unquote, as our guide to where to do some highlights and kick things up if we need to. So it's okay if this isn't the prettiest. And then obviously if we feel like the coverage is too thin, we can go back and we can do a second coat. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this process kind of organically as we get through it. And that's a lot of what painting is. We always joke about it being the fine art of fixing one's mistakes, and that's kind of a nod to the fact that it's never going to go according to plan. You're just kind of going to muss around with it and figure it out as you go. And you work with the paint instead of against it. So sometimes, especially when you're just trying to paint something for the table and you're not looking to go into like heavy, fierce painting competitions. You can just let the paint also dictate how things go and what the final look is and work with it instead of against it. And maybe it won't be exactly what you envisioned in your head when you started, but it's going to be glorious and beautiful and pretty unique. It's going to be a work of art. That's kind of what that phrase means. There's a bit of chaos to it. I haven't noticed that the speed paints reactivate if you don't varnish them first, but I imagine that it probably depends on what technique you're using. Like certainly if you did something really wet or with a lot of medium, it might do it. I've run into paints that have done that before. But I've used them in a lot of different ways in the last couple of weeks, and I seem to be able to highlight and blend and dry brush and all that good stuff over top of them once they're good and dry. So I don't know, we'll find out. Still very, very much in the exploration phase with these things. We've used them on stream, I think 3 times now. And thus far, they have their quirks like every paint line does. And I'm kind of learning the ins and outs and what they want to do to like, really shine. And today we're definitely kind of pushing that limit again. I think somebody asked about, stat cards and the whole process of those getting shifted over to the new format. And the short answer is that yes, there will be different ways and means for players who want to have all of their stat cards in the same format. Over time, whether that's through event kits or through other card packs in the future. But the biggest, like we've talked about on stream and Mini Extravaganza and everything, the first card pack, the biggest push there was to make sure that all of the cards that had significant revisions during the balance update and stuff were taken care of. And then from there, we'll start to shift over format for characters that did not see any kind of like significant balance updates or ability changes or stuff like that. If we put all 100 character cards in one card pack though, the cost would definitely be pretty prohibitive and it wouldn't make a lot of sense, not for players or for anything else. So, we're always looking for the best way to make sure that people can have access to the stuff that they need to play the game and that they want when it comes to the card content and everything. And that's one of the big reasons why that pack also includes the Team Tactic cards. Because as we're going to be talking about more going forward, and especially as that pack comes out, for those who have read any of our organized play documents, you know that there is a card block system that's set up. So the intention from the very beginning with the card set symbols like the little Spider-Man symbol and then the X symbol, the new building symbol, the little like skyscraper symbol, all that stuff builds out and defines card blocks. And so as we move forward in organized play and events, those card blocks will shift and move. And some cards from past blocks will, of course, still be legal because they'll carry over. And some cards from past blocks will phase out. And you can play those cards in more extended, like casual formats and things like that with agreement with your opponent. But in official organized play, just like with the banned and restricted list, the card blocks will define who works in what. Okay. Boop, boop, ba-doop, boo. Large tree. Well, she's already got a large robot. All right, so I'm going to take, well, maybe I'm going to take some of this if I can make it come out. So I've got some Arctic Blue, excuse me, from Scale. I like this. I really like this. This is like a really soft blue-white. We're going to use this as the basis for her skin because it looks pretty unhealthy and kind of cold and cool, like I imagine Black Swan's skin to look. So we're just going to start this as our base coat. It's probably not going to change a whole lot of the look from the Vallejo Gray primer that we have going on, but we got to start with a nice solid foundation. So this is going to be it for us, and then we'll go through and kind of mess with it with some washes and some highlights and all that good stuff. Do the whole process while we let that black speed paint dry, and then we can reevaluate where we are with that as well. Just kind of get in there. I can't honestly remember if she wears like full gloves or if her hands are free, so I made her hands free. And I'm okay with it. It's kind of easy to go back if she doesn't. It's easier actually if she doesn't have her fingers out, because then you just get to paint them black with everything else. But I think they're just like arm sleeves. So that's how we're going to paint ours, because that's what I remember, and I don't have a reference in front of me. Can't get it wrong. I mean, you'll only find out what's revealed at Mini-Stravaganza by watching Mini-Stravaganza panels. I would imagine, though, that we probably have a bit more to show and surprise you with than what we've already shown and or surprised you with. But, you know, who knows? No spoilers. No spoilers. When the Hella OP kit? Hell to Pay, BK probably has a better, can probably give you a better take on that than I can. Oh, what is that? A little bit of yellow in there. That's weird. As far as I know, it's still on target for June. I want to say it was the original release, but I could be completely off on that. So we'll take in the fabulous BK. He'll be able to give us a better idea. Oh, what games do I play with my kids? They actually really like playing Crisis Protocol. We do a lot of the UEs together, actually. So we've done Thanos a few times. We've done Separation Anxiety a couple times, which is really great because then all four of us can play without any modifications. Although I'll be honest, we do most of the UEs with 4 people because that's the family number, and the wife likes to play too. So what I'll do is I'll just split the Crisis team total threat evenly among 3 players and let them pick out their characters and stuff. And they've all painted some of their favorite characters. So my oldest has painted a Captain America, and my youngest has painted Spider-Man, and he painted a Red Hulk because he likes the color red. So of course Red Hulk over Green Hulk. Not a bad choice. Not a bad choice. Yeah, July should still be. No, wait, July. I don't think we've talked about an expected timeline for Heimdall or Scourge that I'm aware of. Ugh. What is happening here? There we go. All right, so pretty happy with that. I'm going to grab a different speed paint, I think. Let's try this Runic Gray. We'll use this for the hair. Favorite team for the Thanos encounter? Well, usually, unfortunately, I have to play Thanos, so my favorite team is Thanos. I can tell you that I have been absolutely wrecked as Thanos by a team centered around Ghost Rider that my oldest has definitely used. So Thanos in that Ultimate Encounter does not appreciate going against Penance Stairs, because in the comic he might be immune, but in the game he is not. And anytime that you wind up with a ton of power on you, which Thanos is wont to do in the Ultimate Encounter, Ghost Rider kind of just laughs maniacally as he penance stares you into oblivion. So I've learned from my mistakes there. I always pay attention to that now whenever Ghost Rider's across the table from me with Thanos. But I've always really just enjoyed, like, when I play UEs, it's always very thematic, and so my favorite teams are typically like Guardians, affiliated with all the trimmings, or Avengers. Because if I'm playing a UE, it's primarily to relive those big moments in the comics and really tell the story rather than necessarily challenging myself against an opponent and trying to figure out how best to win. I've had some fun with the Convocation team recently, so it's kind of imagining what if the Wizards got together to stop Thanos. That was pretty fun. So we had Doctor Strange, Sorcerer Supreme, and Clea. Who else do we have on that team? There were a couple others. I think we took Wong just for fun. So Loki was on there because we figured Loki would, he'd be up for joining the Convocation for short term. Even though he doesn't get invited. He can still get into the bar, but he's not invited to the Convocation meetings. But he fit the magic theme. And that Crisis team was mixed up with a Web Warriors team. So it was like all the spider people. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, other than that, my kids really enjoy, they'll play just about anything, honestly, from the game closet. We don't stick to any particular thing. We've gone through a lot of Asmodee games for sure. It's one of the benefits of Dad being part of an Asmodee studio. We have no end of games, so I'm ashamed to say a lot of the times it winds up with like a one and done. You try it and then you're like, oh, that was great, we'll come back to it later. And years later, maybe you pull it back out. You're like, oh yes, we should do this. How Crisis card usage will change. I'm not entirely sure how to answer that. I guess the easiest answer right now is that it won't change. So Team Tactic cards will rotate, but the Crisis cards don't. So it will be the same. Okay, I'm going to use this. Whoop. Runic Gray here. Let's go right here. It's got all of these undertones and these weird colors going on, so let's see. Ooh, yeah, there we go. kind of just get that runic gray in there as an undertone for the skin, and then go back and we'll punch it back up with more Arctic blue, and then some white. That stuff. All right, so yeah, she's in the Black Order during like the incursion events, so right before the Secret Wars, Doom's Battle World, stuff like that. She is in the more recent Black Ordered miniseries, so the 6-issue run that just focused entirely on the Black Order. There's another run where the Black Order like basically is revived by the Grand Master, and they come back and they battle the Challenger. I can't remember the name of that. I don't think it was it No Way Home? I can't remember the name of the series, but I think that series was like 2019. But her and Supergiant are in the Black Order there. That run, that series, which is Avengers focused, followed right on the heels of Civil War II stuff. But that series leads directly into the Black Order miniseries, because they get brought back from the dead to be the Grandmaster's champions. And then the contest kind of ends, and they're like, well, we're alive now, so now what? And the Grandmaster is like, well, why don't you continue to work for me? And so that sets up the miniseries that happened next. And that Black Order miniseries was just awesome. I really, really liked it. But I really enjoy the Black Order as characters. I think they're just so interesting. But issue 1 just starts with them like fighting these planetary defenses, and they're just slaughtering all of the poor like local defense force. And the whole time it's like Corvus' inner monologue, and he's just worried about whether people think he's funny or not. And it's amazing because he's really concerned about it. He's like, well, I think I'm funny. I think people get my humor. I try to be funny, but am I funny? At one point, he comes in and he's like, he asks Proxima, he's like, Proxima, my love, am I funny? And she's like, what are you even at? Why does this matter? We're in the middle of battle. I'm not like listening to this nonsense. It was a very good married moment. Definitely had conversations like that with my wife. Why are you even asking me this right now? This has nothing to do with what we're doing. Like, yeah, but did you just tell me? Am I funny? So if you haven't read that, 100% recommend that you check it out, because it's a fantastic look at all of the different characters. And it does go through, over the course of the 6 issues, it does go through all 6 of them. Supergiant is not part of the team in that one, I think. I don't think there's a Supergiant in it, as I remember, although it's been a few years since I read it. But I think Supergiant's not on the team at that point. So you get like an issue dedicated to each individual member, and then kind of like the big wrap up. Black Dwarf's issue for him was really interesting too, really fun. Very, very fun. Okay. Yeah, crisis development is probably one of the most challenging things that we do within the studio and stuff. It is, it's definitely a bear, and it takes a lot of effort, a lot of iterations. It's part of the reason why you don't see, it's not raining crisis cards. Obviously, they are more limited in terms of their appearance and scope. Each one has dramatic implications and not just every other crisis card, but every character. And so we do spend a lot of time with every new crisis having to really heavily evaluate it. And so it's always a balance of, that work with reward, right? You want new crises to come out, and you want to make sure that that game environment and the tactical and strategic challenges stay fresh and interesting. But you also have to make sure that those crises still are healthy for the game. They're still doing what you want them to do, all of that good stuff. So coming up with the ideas is fairly easy, though. You kind of just go back to that college lore and you look at a character and you say, okay, well, we definitely want a crisis to come, with a character like Thanos or a character like Hulk. Well, what are some of those really iconic storylines or story beats even? They don't have to be directly pulled from a single story or a single comic. They can kind of be like things that you see reoccur over and over again in various media. Gamma Wave is one that, every couple years it feels like there's a Hulk story about gamma radiation getting loose and it affecting people and turning them into Hulks or something like that, or poisoning everybody, and only Hulk and other Hulks can really do anything about it because they're immune to the gamma effects, right? And so, of course, you want to make a crisis out of that. It makes a lot of sense. And so you look at stuff like that, right? The Black Order one that comes with Thanos is pulled right out of Infinity. So if you've read the Infinity storyline, these cosmic vaults and stuff like that, that you see, those are right out of that run, right out of that story. Demon portals and stuff like that. Again, these are just tropes that these characters deal with a lot. And so they make really great moments for players to go out and tell their own Marvel stories. And from there, once you've kind of decided on what the theme is, then the hard work comes in and you have to say, okay, well, how do we implement it? What does that mean? What's the special, what are the special rules for this scenario? What do the objectives do? How is it challenging players? What team compositions does it favor? All these really great questions that you have to ask and that make the crisis system interesting and fun. And a lot of the times it's just iteration upon iteration, learning from past crises. Maybe things didn't work quite like you wanted them to. You're like, well, we thought this would be a really cool idea, but in reality it doesn't quite work that way, so now we can tweak it. It's not that the crisis is non-functional, because obviously then we just have to fix it. And thankfully that hasn't really been the case, but you learn player patterns, you learn how certain things in the lab, quote unquote the lab, behave differently when they're in the wild, right? Some things you just can't see in a controlled environment. Are you with me, scientists? I know you're out there. I know my science people are out there. They know what I'm saying. It's one of the most frustrating things of research. You can replicate it in a lab, but once you get into a real world scenario, it just doesn't function the same. So those are all the quote-unquote fun things that developers get to go through and that playtesting is for. Favorite crisis? That's a good question. I think I don't know, am I going to sound... I feel like this is a question that's either going to make me sound really lame or really crazy. But I think Spider Portals is probably one of my favorite crises. Just because as I've talked about before, you can like building for efficiencies and kind of trying to plan everything out and do the hard math and come up with a really good game plan. But I like chaos. I like to have to figure things out in the moment and to really crisis manage, as it were. So I'm always a big fan of. I'm always a big fan of the crises that are a bit more unpredictable, have more chaos to them. Part of the reason why some of my favorite crises, just to play for fun, are from the Infinity War campaign event kit, which you can now get on the website from the download section, because after a certain amount of time, all of our organized play materials go online so that everyone has their opportunity to get things like those special crises, or eventually the Magneto Ultimate Encounter. That'll be one that goes up this year. For folks who might not have had a chance to get it when their store held the event, or maybe their store at the time wasn't holding events, whatever. You can always get the materials as print and play, so you have to wait a little bit longer. You're never not going to have the opportunity to have it. And of course, if you wind up at a convention or something like that in the future, there's every possibility that those events will have, back issues, quote unquote, of those events as well. Somebody asked what I use for her hair. This is a mix of the, Runic Gray and the Hive Purple speed paint. So, oh gosh, my mic just fell off. These clips are bad, Rowan. I think you just need better clips. They're weak. They've been too well used. Too well used. Has there been any talk of Gen Con? Yeah, we've talked. We've talked Gen Con a little bit. Similar to Adepticon and Star Wars Celebration that's coming up and all that stuff. Those big events are spearheaded by our great partners at Asmodee North America and the centralized organized play and events team. So they do the vast majority of the planning and the booth logistics and the event hall stuff. And we work with them to provide whatever they need in order to make great shows. Oh, that's metallic. I don't want that for the skin. That would be bad. There we go. So, oh, that's interesting. That paint doesn't have a nozzle. Well, we found that out before disaster struck, so that's okay. But yes, so there'll definitely be stuff happening at Gen Con. I imagine that there will be a lot of the same style of events that we saw at Adepticon for all the different games. So you can kind of look at Adepticon as a good roadmap for what I expect the Asmodee team will be looking to put on there, and of course we'll be advising on some cool stuff that we can do for new things. There's always new events that are available and things like that. But that's kind of how those work, and it's a really nice partnership because, of course, it lets us as a studio do what we do best, which is making cool miniatures and sweet games and stuff like that. And one fabulous Courtney Corndog, she is our liaison with the central team, so she kind of serves as the bridge between us, and She's able to work with them to make sure that we provide everything that they're asking for, or give them advice on things we can do if they maybe are not thinking about something that we think would be cool. And her work is invaluable to making sure those events are as cool and awesome as they can be. And we super appreciate it. I don't know if she's in the chat. Sometimes she joins us, sometimes she doesn't. She's real busy right now, though, because Star Wars Celebration is right around the corner. So she's probably not listening to my inane ramble right now. She's likely doing more important things. Joke's on her, though. There's nothing more important than painting hour. Summer knows. That's why she doesn't leave. She just hangs out. She's like, yeah, I'll do it twice a week.
It's because I like you guys.
Is it?
It's not at all because it's my job.
Yeah, see? Give us that ego boost. I love being around painting. I loves it. It's the best.
I was actually just getting my order ready for a bunch of minis I'm going to be painting.
Yeah, see? You got so much stuff to do. It's okay. You can say it. We're inspiring, Summer. We've inspired you.
I've expressed this before.
Yeah, inspiring. That's the Dallas Kemp. That's the Dallas Kemp way. Just inspire. All right. So, just gonna keep building up this skin. I do really like that runic blue over that Arctic blue, and I'm just mixing. I'm just mixing purity white from scale with the Arctic blue right now to create my kind of like staged highlights. And I'll just blend them out as I feel like I need to. But I'm looking for a lot of contrast here, so I just want to make sure that my blends don't have to be like perfectly smooth, because how does, black swan skin work anyway? Nobody really knows. We just want it to be, I just really want that pop. We want that like harsh hit of light, kind of darker facial features, because her hair's obscuring that side of her face. So we'll leave that one a bit more in shadow. We come over here to where the face isn't as much in shadow. And then we can kind of like pop that out with a bit more white and a little more stronger highlights. But overall, it's kind of like playing with those different colors and not worrying about everything being perfectly smooth. And we could honestly play with this skin and kind of building these different highlights and stuff for hours if we really wanted to, because we just keep going back and forth and going in and adding more shadow, more highlight. But I think we're at a point where I'm pretty happy with it. Go over here and hit this shoulder a little bit. Throw my brush on the ground. That was a smooth move. I haven't done that in like ever. It's just my Tuesday. My Tuesday is throw everything on the ground. That's where we're at. Okay, I'm gonna go in, and since I have this white out, I'm gonna take some of my black mix that I had before, and I just want to go in and do some really poppy scritches and stuff. So there's just gonna be like some really high contrast. Woo! Sometimes your brush control gets away from you, and that's why you have the second brush. So I just want these to be some like pretty high contrast scritches and scratches, and it's going to add some of that texture and a little bit of like dimensionality to this flat fabric. And it's these little like micro highlights, kind of like micro folds that you'll see in the cloth that'll really make your fabrics and stuff feel, especially your blacks, feel a bit more alive and real. And so you can always do, you can do classic edge highlighting where you just aim for those extreme edges, give them a little bit of that line. But you can get a little more artsy with it too. Just kind of like come in and hit whatever you think would be a cool little reflective point. Of course, there are some painters out there who are really phenomenal with this, and they can make, their flat blacks look just like glossy vinyl fabric, and it's amazing and cool. And someday maybe I'll get to the point where I kind of learn how to do that better, but it's not going to be today. It's not going to be in the next 12 minutes. All right, so I'm just going to come over a couple more of these little spots. Blend that one out just a little bit. It's a little big. Just kind of gives these little gauntlet, Vambrant sleeves, whatever they're supposed to be, a little bit more of that kick. And over here, try to keep it out of the really deep recesses, or otherwise the effect won't work super well. You're going to put in little gloss highlights. You definitely want to be where the highlights would be, not where the highlights aren't. And this is all just making it up. There's no, outside of like just thinking about where the light would hit and where you want to draw the eye's attention, because that's what these really bright spots will do. They'll draw the eye to them. There's no necessarily right or wrong answer. So you can get pretty artsy with it. You can get pretty simple with it. Stay very safe. Like here on our little ribbons, her battle ribbons, I'm just playing it pretty safe, and I'm just going for kind of where the sharp edges of those cloths are, because, that's naturally where that light would collect and bounce. But you could get pretty wild if you wanted to. And that's before exploring a bunch of like glazing and washing and adding extra like cosmic-y colors to it. You can definitely get away with like doing some magentas or some cyans, giving them that cosmic glow, like they're in spice, or maybe they're in the middle of like a Vegas style strip, a lot of neon lights, a lot of color. Tons of different ways to approach it. One of the things we're not going to get to on this girl today is like the dark lining, which is really important because, you know, like we really need a dark separation line where the clothing and the skin shows and where our hand comes out of the gauntlet and stuff like that. We need to do the leathers, and then we can also get some more separation between the leather belts, which we're not really messing with. And of course, we got to do the robot. What do I think of the term? It's clobbering time. I've always preferred the term it's hobbying time. Yeah, I got it growing from summer. My day is complete. Complete. Okay. Grab some of this Miskatonic Gray. We will just really quick start using this Miskatonic Gray to kind of soften up the hair. Well, you could leave it this purple. Her hair is definitely more. I just wanted that purple kind of as an undertone to make it look spacey, but I didn't, you know, my goal is not to have just purple hair. That's not this Black Swan's life. We're going a bit more to that comic accuracy, so the undertone will give us this nice alien kind of look, but we can build up our colors over the top of it. Let that translucency of the paint kind of work to our advantage. Let the sculpting and the raised detail in the hair work to our advantage. So just kind of making sure that we're just hitting those high areas and those peaks. These are the valleys with more of the purple shade. Just build that over and over and over again until we get to the point that we're pretty happy with the hair. There's definitely not a single way to get anything done when it comes to painting for sure, but I kind of think life in general. You can learn a lot by watching someone else, but you're always going to wind up having the most success when you turn their way into your way, whatever that means for you and whatever you need to do. As Dallas kind of has pointed out before, there's nothing in painting that can't be undone or covered up just by adding a little bit more paint. So keep your paint colors smooth and thin and build up by layers, and you can use washes and glazes and translucencies and all that stuff to shift colors. So, you know, you can make a whole lot of effects and a whole lot of final stuff. Oh, look, it's back. Well, that's terrifying. All right, let's mix in a little bit of white with this Miskatonic Gray just to get a better highlight color. We'll come in and hit this hair some more. Try to work on those parts that would have the most highlight. But the cool thing about white, as we've talked about, is white is always defined by its shadow. So you don't need a lot of pure white to make something feel white, but you do need a lot of color in the shadows to make it look right. If you just try to like lather on a bunch of white and go for that like solid white wall approach, you're always going to be disappointed. It's never going to look right. Because in reality, white needs its shade. And your eye will read the smallest amount of white highlight as being white in color because of that. You know, even that white painted wall probably has yellow in it or blue in it. It depends on the light source. Is it sunlight? Is it yellow fluorescent? Is it something else? So, if you have trouble painting white, the first step is to not paint white. Paint a different color and then put a little bit of white on those extreme highlights. And you'll be amazed at how much more white your not white looks compared to the white that is white. This is like getting into some crazy Zen master stuff here. There is no spoon. All right. So, boop. I think we are pretty much at our time. I just want to smooth out some of this hair here. Got a little chunky on me because I was going quick. That's okay. It gives us some natural texture too. Talked on one of the streams about just letting the brush strokes work for you a bit. That's kind of what we wound up doing by default here. So it's a little more artsy, a little less smooth. Still works. All right, well, there's the start of our Black Swan. We obviously still have a decent amount to go. We got a whole robot. We've got some dark lining and defining. The mouse still needs work. We can still clean up some of the blacks, but overall, a really strong start for a single hour of work. Just coming right along, probably another 90 minutes, and we can have this miniature looking amazing and ready to go. So with that, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun. Hope you learned something. Hope you're excited to try out some of these techniques on your own. Continue to experiment and explore some of the speed paints and a bunch of other paints. So we'll let you know what we find out and how to work with those as well. Sure to join us again tomorrow, 1 p.m. Pacific. Dallas Kemp's going to be back on. He's going to be painting Supergiant, the other half of this amazing Black Order duo. That's coming out later this summer. Until then, I will see you not next week because I believe we are off stream until after Mini Stravaganza. So enjoy this last week of streaming. We will return with a vengeance at Mini Stravaganza June 4th, 5th, and 6th. 5th, 6th, and 7th. Summer, what day is it? 9, 10, and 11. Oh my gosh, it's so much further into June than I thought. So June 9th, 10th, and 11th, we'll be back with Mini Stravaganza and all of the content you can shake a stick at. And we'll be resuming our streaming schedule shortly after Mini Stravaganza as well. So with that, thank you so much. I will see you in a little bit. See you at Mini Stravaganza. Till then, be good to each other, stay safe, and enjoy your hobby time. Goodbye. Woo!